mic?
Yes, you do.
Oh, yes. Okay. Please.
Audio person should be able to do this, yeah?
There's a volume control.
Hello? Hey!
Hey!
We're off and running! So wow, there's a lot of people here. It's nice to meet you all. I know some of you, but not all. I work with Guy Whitmore. He's our studio director. He's here in the audience today. Yay, Guy. Yay. We have a couple other audio people from PopCap here as well. Damien Kaspauer, over there. Damien. Jason Wolford. Jason. And soon to be with us next Monday, Jacqueline Schumann. Yay. So anyway, it's a great team. And I've learned a lot since I've been here. I've been here about a year and a half, and it was a team of one, Guy, before I got here. So then we became two, and now we're 6. Yeah. So anyway, I've learned a lot since I've been here, and I wanted to talk about how audio tools have sort of developed specifically for Facebook games. And then I'll talk about the first game, how it gets ported over to iOS using Audio Kinetics Wise. So I'll be going over essentially 3 different games in sort of a progression. So we'll start with, so web-based games, primarily Facebook is what we do. People do want immediate satisfaction. They want things now, they don't want to wait, you know how it is, you don't want to wait more than maybe a minute. Maybe the first time you'll wait about 2 minutes. So you have to develop a downloading strategy with your developers. If you have a lot of content, it can't just all come at one time. So that's one thing for this game. So size definitely matters. If this is too audio specific and you have questions, you can ask along the way, although I do have some explanation as well. So I know not everybody's audio here. So. Streaming files can be a good way to get content to users, but you don't always want to do that because other content might be also downloading at the same time. So you want to watch out for that and use that carefully. With web-based Facebook games, it's not like a console game where you basically create a console game and you're done. Yay, I shipped. Move on to the next one. This you ship, and then you come back to it in another month or 2. There may be more content, there may be fixes, there may be upgrades. So it's a continual thing. It's a different beast really than console games in that way, which is nice because you can also go in and fix something you didn't like, or you could add something. So that's a good thing to build on. Not so far in the past, say for Zuma Blitz. In fact, still today, at this moment.
That's a recent past as in Monday.
Like as of this afternoon. There's no authoring tool for that. So what we end up doing is capturing game footage, creating sounds, and then as many people say, throw assets over the fence to the programmers for integration. Then we have to wait till they get it into a build, listen to a build, and then send that back to them again with any fixes. You don't have as many opportunities for fixes and changes this way. It's a very slow iteration process, and you can't get it to the level of perfection that you really want it to be. So we like to have tools in our hands. So for Facebook web-based games, largely they use Flash. And for audio, there are some pluses and minuses. The pluses are you can get the MP3 format for free. Essentially, if the MP3 audio is in a SWIF or a FLAW, which I will tell you what that is in a minute, you don't have to pay an additional fee. So that's a nice bonus. You can also get seamless looping of files, so you don't have a hiccup in the file. This is very handy for music and also ambience. It's a big plus, actually. There's the organizational structure of the FLAWs and SWIFs within Flash that's helpful. Also helps you with downloading strategies. In the tool, Flash tool, you can establish whether it's streaming or downloading. And also within the SWIF, you can place your audio with the animations if you would like to. You don't actually do that very often, but it is possible. Minuses of Flash, no DSP, which basically means the audio you put in is the audio that it plays back. I can't do pitch shifting or volume control, anything like that. So it's extremely limited as an authoring tool. So really you need custom tools, which is what we're talking about. Before we move on though, a few helpful terms to those who aren't so familiar with Flash. A flaw is when you author a Flash game, all of its audio and visual assets are stored in a flaw, .fla file. A .swf, called a SWF, is when you publish a Flash game, all of its audio, visual, and code snippets are compressed in the SWF. XML, which is the scripting tool that we'll be talking about, is a text file that you can edit in Notepad or some other such tool that's easily readable by code. HOG, which I'll talk about later, is an acronym for Hidden Object Game. Perforce is a program that we use for source control, where we check in files and out files. People might know other ones such as Git or SVN, source safe, key server. So, the first game that we developed a tool for that we're talking about today is Solitaire Blitz for Facebook. When we started on this, actually guys started on it before me, there were no tools. So we sat down with the developer and sort of whiteboarded what features we would like to have. They came up with a solution of allowing us to do XML scripting. And they extended the audio features through the XML scripting and allowed us the control and integration through that tool. With this tool, the XML scripting, we were also able to run local builds using a program called Charles Proxy to test our content before pushing a build to the whole team, which is nice because you can actually finesse things and get it sounding great before everyone hears it. We also used, in the debug program, we could use a debug console so we could see what was being called and check files. It's very handy to use as an audio integrator. So using the tool, we could add sounds, like WAV files, to the flaws, publish the SWFs, work in the XML to control sound and music parameters. Parameters that we could actually use are volume, variations, looping, setting a maximum amount of time for sound variation type, fading in and out with custom time, channel assignment, and prioritization. So those are the parameters that we actually got into the tool, which is pretty darn good, because before we had, here, how's that? One thing we did need in this particular game was to have a defined amount of time, actually a range of time between sounds established in the code. So random space and time between variations, we had to hard code that with the programmer. Examples in Solitaire Blitz that we used for ambient sound effects and music. For the music, we did a main menu loop. We had musical ambient cues, which are these gestures that you'll hear. I'll play something for you very shortly. Just a quick little phrase, and then there'd be silence. And then another little phrase and silence. And they would be interrupted by line clearing cues, which you'll see soon. And then win-lose cues, and also a 1, 2, 3 sort of, you're on the right run kind of musical indicator. So we used many parameters for all of the music. In sound design, we had an ambient wave loop and also different individual sound effects playing. We also used variations on the card flips for the worm vocals. If you guys played Solitaire Blitz, you may love the worm. We hope you do. Yes? Yes. Lovers of the worm. Okay. And other worm sound effects. So, here we go. Here's a bit of the game. Let me take a moment to start it. That's the splash. Main menu loop. Loops around. The composer is Peter McCon. Fantastic composer. So here's the gameplay. So you hear the bubbles and buzz. That's an ambient cue there, that just a quick little gesture. There's the chimes that let you know you're on a good run. That's a line clearing cue. It's right here. Another line clearing cue there. It's probably more fun to play than to watch it, but again, a line clearing cue. The wind cue. That's Pearl. So actually those word vocals, we do have variations on the word vocals, each sound is a little different. And essentially that's it for Solitaire Blitz, Facebook. Just one round of the game. I should say that we also were nominated for a Game Audio Award for this. We'll find out next week. You know how we did? Yay! So now on a little bit to the XML scripting. So this is basically what we had as our tool to work with. We entered in all of this text into the text tool, and there are three sections of the XML script. There's the first part at the top, that's the cue, calling out the cue that the programmer will then call. So that's the cue list, part of the cue list. Then the next portion is the sound with the parameters that I talked about. So there's a sound ID, there's the sound type, what kind of sound it is, and then the list of parameters you can choose from, which I mentioned, variations, volume, looping, etc. So that's defined in the sound area. Then after that, then there's the mapping, so that the cue is mapped to the sound source. And that's pretty much it for the XML scripting. So I will go on to our next game, which is Zuma Blitz. So what's interesting about this XML scripting and what we developed with Hayes Clark is that Zuma Blitz also did not have an audio tool. So we handed over basically what we were doing with Solitaire to Max Anderson, and he took that tool and developed it, and he developed it for Zuma Blitz. So there's sort of a progression with this tool, which is interesting and very organic. So it was an interesting thing to find out how this would work. In this particular game for Zuma Blitz, how many people here know Zuma Blitz? Okay. With this game, with the last version of Zuma Blitz, we were able to upgrade a lot of the sounds and use this tool. So the music changed, probably know if you've played it lately, that its sound basically changed a bit. They only used flaws and swifts for the music and looping files. So the rest of the files were MP3 files that lived in a folder outside of the flaws, and so did the XML script. So it's a little bit different, but used a lot of the same principles. They also used Charles Proxy, allowing us to do integration from a local build and test everything out locally before submitting, and also Perforce. So it's very similar in terms of structure, but a few added features. For sound design, similar parameters to Solitaire Blitz, but he added the random time between variations so that we could set that ourselves, which is really, really great to have. We used that for the ambience and individual sound effects within the game. And then music was a hard-coded music system. So that was within a flaw. So it did allow for seamless looping and branching of the music. Guy, Whitmore, and Max actually developed the music system prior to this XML scripting. So these things sort of came together and became a new thing. They were able to set transition and sync points within Flash. He delivered an Excel spreadsheet of music cues and those sync points. And it's a seamless music from beginning to end, and it works really beautifully, which I'll show you in a moment. So there's an intro splash cue, and then it goes directly into the menu loop, and then in the game there's a progressive gameplay segments, and then a game end cue. It follows the gameplay really well. So let's see if we can hear a bit of that. Hello? Zuma Blitz. Sorry. Can you hear it? Not very well, huh? Turn my mic up. So the music changed here. We're in the game. Builds an intensity as you go. Music change there. Hello? Is that better? Yeah. Phew. Sorry about that. Okay? Okay. You can hear me? Okay, so the third game that took this XML scripting, yeah, John, Hidden Agenda. He mentioned this earlier. This comes from the Vancouver studio. It's a hidden object game, primarily, that's on Facebook. It's doing really well. It's a Flash-based game. It's in terms of how we developed the scripting, it's quite similar to what we did with Solitaire Blitz. In this case, the developer on Hidden Agenda, which was Jesse Ringrose, took the tools from Zuma and Solitaire and sort of crafted it now for Hidden Agenda, and what I think of as kind of the best of both worlds, really, because he took all the things we needed, which is great. So again, with the XML scripting, the music design was an opening splash. Town music cues, very similar to Solitaire Blitz in terms of the functionality, with a gesture would come in and then some random amount, or not random, a range of silence between, and then another one would play maybe 8 seconds later or so. And then hog game cues in the hidden object game area. Also again with the random time between the cues. So the sound design, we also used the Xml scripting parameters. We used ambient looping, randomly timed individual sound effects, and random time set for variations like Zuma. So Zuma was the first one that had that ability where we could set the time in the XML, and then we could use that for hidden agenda as well. So, I'll display you a little bit of this. Okay. I have the same situation. So the gestures, cues you'll hear. Is it loud enough?
Oh, yes.
Ambient sound effects, you have birds coming in random set of times. And now we're in the town area. You have cues coming in, and then silence, and then another cue. Worked really well for the town. It's a fun game, show up the night, we played it. I needed friends. We didn't have friends. But again, the music cue coming in.
This is also a usability study.
Yes. By the way, I have something to tell you. Anyway, so another example of using the same scripting and hearing what we can do with that in terms of having the tools in our hands. Stan Leppard was the composer on this one. Guy Whitmore was the composer on Zuma Blitz. So there we go, that's hidden agenda. So, okay. So a little bit of the scripting for hidden agenda, it's very similar, but you'll see there's fade in, fade outs, and there's the, down below, the random min and random max amount of time between phrases that we can set within the scripting tool. Okay. So just to recap on hidden agenda a little bit, I was working with a remote team with Jesse Ringrose primarily, the programmer. We set up local builds using Charles Proxy again. They had a special submission tool that that I could use, so after I had finished my work for the day or whatnot, I could submit to the, use the submission tool, and it would go directly into the build. We used Link, basically, to communicate. The programmer and I would just talk back and forth that way. I don't really know what his voice sounds like, actually.
He does exist, I can testify
Does he?
to that.
I have to meet him someday. Only one little disadvantage, I'm working remotely. Not all my sounds got to get in for the beta launch. Ooh, sad. And I think that is part of working remotely. If you're working with the team, you're working with them all the time, and it's much easier to get all your sounds in. But we're still working that out. So. And that's hidden agenda. Last thing here is Solitaire Blitz Ios, which released today. Yay! Yeah! So great. So what you saw on Facebook, we ported it over to iOS, and we used Audio Kinetics Wise to do so. Who here knows what that is? Okay. All right. It's a tool that audio people can use to get audio content into the game. It allows for far more features than what I was talking about with the XML scripting. Looping, streaming, volume, mixing, variations, containers, switches, just, it's very, very deep. There are some experts in the room that could really talk to that much more than I can. So that probably would be another talk, yeah. But essentially with this tool, we're able to create a list of events for the developers. They put them in the program, and then we have the control over the rest of the game and what we want to do, how we want it to sound, with some exceptions, of course. So Wise also works directly with Perforce, which is a handy thing about Wise. For Solitaire Blitz, we had 285 audio files in the originals folder and 150 megabytes before the compression, which is large. But afterwards, we got it down under 10. So we'll talk about that in a second. There were a couple of issues using Wise. There's a generating banks feature that Wise does. It's a little awkward with Perforce because you have to move things around and delete things, and it became sort of a cumbersome process. We since then have developed a custom script that allows us to not have to do that, which is great. The placement of events with animations sometimes can still be a little bit awkward. Where is that event starting exactly? So there were cases that the timing wasn't quite right. We had to go back in and fix that. And then in the music design, as you may recall with Solitaire Blitz, in the game itself, you have the ambient gestures, the music, gentle music cues, and then a line clearing cue, right? And then we actually need to go back to the ambient gestures again. Well, there's no real reset feature in Wise to go back to something. So we had to figure out a clever way to make that happen, which we worked on, and we finally got working. Yeah, they're a very smart team. So size was an issue initially, so we decided to stream the music, and we did get our size to under 10 megabytes, which is an accomplishment. So if we wanted to get deeper into Wise, I suggest talking to Daisy and Caspar afterwards. It's quite knowledgeable. So that is really it in terms of audio tools and sort of progression with these games. Does anyone have any questions?